Hi, I'm Sandra Parker. Do you spend more time in what if than what is? I want to talk about anxiety. Anxiety. Right. Well, anxiety has been my area of expertise for a long, long time. Almost 2 decades. I've been working with people who have panic attacks and generalized anxiety disorder, otherwise known as worrywarts, people who are compulsive, people who have issues about control, perfectionism, procrastination, all of those being manifestations of anxiety. And yet I'm talking about signal anxiety like it's a good thing, like it's something I want you to feel, I want you to be with. And it's because there's actually two different things I'm talking about. Signal anxiety, which is this telephone call from your body saying, hello, I'm feeling a little bit vulnerable. Come on home and be with me so we can find out what's going on. And this other thing, which is when I get that call and I don't want to feel what's going on, I register that there's some vulnerability, I register the signal of anxiety, and then I jump out into worrying about that, or trying to control things, or trying to make things be a certain way. I make up stories, what if, what if, what if, what if, what if, what if, and all the while I'm not with what is. All right? So pathological anxiety, which is basically the domain of anxiety that basically everybody thinks about when they think about anxiety, is completely different from the kind of anxiety we're talking about with signal anxiety. All right? It's everything we do not to feel signal anxiety. Right? Everything we do in the domain of worry and control. Right? And so when people come in to see me with anxiety problems, they're not coming in to see me, at least to their knowledge, to tune in to signal anxiety. In fact, they're quite horrified when I say that they need to start feeling anxiety. They're coming in because these anxious defenses against the feeling of signal anxiety are now jamming them up. All right, they're worrying too much. They're not getting any enjoyment out of life. They're unable to go out into the world because they're avoiding activities, situations, people, because they're afraid that they're going to experience this signal, and they've made up stories now, sometimes really upsetting stories about catching diseases or other bad things that could happen, elevators falling, or other stories essentially that make sense. And gosh, we got to give ourselves credit. We're meaning-making creatures. We're trying to make sense of our experience. We're trying to understand, why do I feel this way? I don't feel very good. Oh, it must be this danger, right? Oh, I'm gonna look for an answer to this feeling in me. We don't realize it's just the feeling of being human, right? Of not being the boss of everything and wanting things to be a certain way. This terrible, horrible, awful, wonderful, brilliant, amazing fact that we are vulnerable organisms and have the ability to actually be aware of that, right? And in abandoning ourselves in that experience, now we come up with these very frightening stories that keep us very busy. And people often say to me, well, why would I frighten myself? It's such an unpleasant experience, right? Why would I do that? But it's because the hope in a worrywart is that if I worry and ruminate and think about it enough, maybe I can somehow make it not happen. So there's some hope here that I can figure out a way, right, to not ever have to feel those signals anymore, right? So there's this mistaken belief that if I worry about something or I try and control it, right, that maybe there's a chance that the bad thing won't happen. But we're not really realizing that the bad thing isn't really, those what ifs are usually far removed from the reality of my life, right? They're long shots. They're often, very unpleasant but unlikely events that I'm now fixated on. They're not really bearing very directly on my daily lived life. Right? In fact, my daily lived life, the quality of it is depressed and flattened and made dull because of all that worry. Right? And all of that is because of this unwillingness, and we don't even really realize it. I mean, I'm not wanting to judge anyone in this. It's actually very, very subtle, but it's the unwillingness to just be with the little phone call that came up in the body just before we went off into our worry path, just before we took off down that storyland of what-ifing, right? And so to just come back to the moment before you started ruminating about that, right? Just before you went off into that, story about catching some illness or somebody not behaving in a way that would be okay. Just before that happened, there was something that happened in your body that needed your attention, right? We can just be with that. And that's what my work is to help people approach that, even though it's very, very hard to do.